We've recently added some highly specialized builds to Easthaven County. The college football stadium and marina, the international airport and Air Force detachment, great for tourism and economic growth. But behind the scenes, several core services are under increasing strain, drawing quite a bit critique from residents due to this lack of public investment. So today we're giving the people what they want. A racetrack. Now just hear me out. Once we've got some V8 muscle cars thundering through Easthaven, we can build some schools or whatever. But not before. The people of Rome didn't yell for bread. They wanted the Colosseum. Let's get started. Okay, so objectively, this is not the right priority to make, but you know, I've asked some of the people awaiting hearses whether they're okay with me moving forward with the racetrack, and I haven't heard any negative feedback yet. Haven't heard any feedback yet. And since this channel is very much fueled by ruthless creativity, I think we gotta go with it. I've gotten a bit of an increased interest in motorsports recently. And I think this plot of land is the perfect location for a racetrack here in Easthaven. It's nestled in between the Massachusetts Route 28, a major highway cutting through the entire county, a office and industrial district with 0 residents, and of course a noisy airport. So let's do a quick little cleanup and designate the pit area, the main straight, and the starting grid layout. The racetrack grid, city nerds. So we've got a pretty flat piece of land right here next to the Airport Express, and I actually kind of want to start building some structures out just to get an overall feel of the scale and the amount of distance we need to the actual road and the connections we need to make. So for this purpose, we're going to grab some static pluggables, and we're actually just going to stay right here within the roads menu, because this road maintenance depot building is, I think, a pretty good fit for the pit garages we'll be using. Now, it's not gonna be some massive super international racetrack. I have a few sources of inspiration I want to showcase you guys in just a moment, but we do need quite a few pit roads. So I think we're going to place one of these, enable Anarchy, and just try and stitch an additional one into it. We're not going to worry too much about getting the width of the pit road, the perfect dimensions, and we do have this cheeky airport cover. That is the actual name of it, that we're going to utilize just to get an initial idea of how this is going to look. So let's just make sure that we move a bit into the actual props, just like this, and get that covered. And then we of course need the main straight. Now the main straight might not necessarily be the longest or most high-speed section of this track, because that's not necessarily the case, but it just needs to be long enough so that you can field a decently sized grid of race cars, of course. And I think this is a situation where I might end up widening this a little bit, but I do want the track to be kind of narrow, so let's take a bit of a dive into some of my sources of inspiration. So we're starting with the Sebring International Raceway in Sebring, Florida. This is a personal favorite of mine. I've raced this across a couple of fun games. And the thing I really like about this is that it's very old, it's patchy, it's bumpy, it's wonky. It's really not, it's not a freshly paved international standard Formula 1 circuit. And I really like that. But something I like even more is that it's pretty narrow throughout. And I also like that the track limit line here is very narrow as well, and then beyond the track you just have grass. It's just grassy fields and a bit of dirt, and that's basically it. There's no fancy surfaces, no fancy concrete or colorized areas, anything like that. It also makes it pretty tricky to drive, because if you've got a couple of wheels outside track limits, they're on grass and your grip is gonna be all messed up. A similar example is Oulton Park Circuit in the UK, and this is mainly again the same inspiration about the track. As you can see, it's relatively narrow, there's a ton of grass, a bit of dirt at places, or rather gravel to slow down if you go off track, but it's kind of got the same vibe. We're gonna wrap up with Virginia International Raceway, and by now you can probably see that I have a type. It's the very same deal here. Narrow track, lots of grass, and pretty small curbs all throughout. Oh, they actually have street view, or I guess track view. But this very much showcases what I want to mimic in Easthaven. So let's see if we can put some of that inspiration to use by moving straight into laying down the entire circuit. But I think it's obvious the first thing we need to do is just to create a slightly narrower version of this cheeky road here. So we're gonna say use as template, and then we're gonna call this very cheeky airport cover. And I think we basically need, let's see, we'll need to drop it by a couple of meters at least. So I think 13 is probably a decent spot. Then we're gonna grab this and we're gonna say place more. We'll enable the continuous tool, and we're gonna start with all snapping because I have to branch out from the main straight right here. Importantly, we need contour lines, and we're gonna need to enable ground mode as well as constant slope. We'll need to start with a pretty tight left-hander as the cars move down the main straight here. And that's gonna be followed up by a very long, curvy right-hander here as we move up the hill. Then I think it would be super fun with like a quick 2 turns here. So we'll grab a very narrow left and then right. This one is gonna be really tricky because the car is gonna act weird with the elevation change. And then we're just gonna move in a very smooth fashion all the way up the hill here. And I think most cars will be able to take this flat out. We'll make the top of the hill here quite technical. So you've got a straight segment here, then a smooth left-hander, and then moving down here to a really tight hairpin. And I guess we do need some sort of barriers up here, because if you kind of overshoot this corner, then yeah, I mean, you're gonna have a bad time. We'll utilize a bit more of the hill by just moving in with a smooth left segment here, flat out as well. And then maybe like type of chicane like we have here, where we try to get the cars to kind of reduce the speed a little bit. So we'll have a tight hairpin moving into a slightly more smooth left-hander. And then we're just gonna make a right-hander and try to transition down the remainder of the hill here. And then for the final stretch, we'll have a long, slightly left-turning segment leading into a right segment. Left, right, then we'll enable snapping and see if we can connect up in a somewhat decent fashion. As this is going to be a pretty high detail build, I want to get the track layout correct before we dive into all the detailing, adding the curbs and whatnot. So I've just went through the track, making sure things are looking all right, as well as making it slightly more narrow still. And then I've just restaged the entire pit area to be closer to the starting grid, so that we've got a bit more space back here. This is like the backstage area of a racetrack, so there's going to be tons of trucks and teams moving goods around, all that kind of stuff. Speaking of the pits, we of course need pit entries and exits, and we're gonna have to think about where we place these so that it doesn't result in dangerous situations. Thinking isn't my strong suit, so I'm just gonna need to have a bit of a look, but in the meanwhile I can showcase you guys the pit entry road. So this is basically just a super cheeky version of the cheeky airport cover. It's the same road, just 5 meters wide. Okay, so I've been thinking for a bit. Yes. And I realize I've made a bit of a mistake, or at least I've made this much harder than it has to be. Because going by the 3 examples I showcased as my points of inspiration, the pit area should perhaps be within the track limits and not on the outside right here. And in our case, it would make pit entry and exits much easier. So I think we're just gonna grab the marquee tool. You guys know I love a good marquee tool, and we're just gonna move this on the inside of the track and rotate it and move it close just like this. This makes things a whole lot easier for us. Just the pit exit alone, we can just do a simple merge right here. Most of the cars that aren't coming from the pits and are at full speed are going to be hogging the right side here because they've been kissing the apex on the left turn. So there shouldn't really be much traffic on the left side here, so we can just create a smooth connection. Now the pit entry is still a little tricky. My initial thought was to just branch off by the turn right here, but you could have cars, you know, attempting to overtake or running 2 or 3 wide down this long straight here at very high speeds. So I honestly think the safest bet would be to actually branch out before we reach this turn. So it's going to be quite a pit entry. Alternatively, we would do it around here and assume that the cars would be on the inside for this turn if they're not looking to hit up the pit. I might just try and do this. Although I can't help but imagine a situation where you're on the outside, you lose a bit of grip, and you end up in the pit lane without wanting to. That feels like something I may have done in Gran Turismo when I was 10. Let's just redraw this. I redrew this just to create a bit of distance from the actual track, and I think we're ready to move on. Now there's just one pretty massive hurdle I need to get fixed before we can start detailing this up, and that is having white lines on either side of the entire track to highlight the track limits. And this isn't possible when using empty lanes in the road configuration we've done here. So I have created this alternative version instead. And if we grab Road Builder, you'll be able to see that this is basically regular car roads with markings enabled and then an empty lane in between. Now obviously we don't want it to be designated as a highway, we don't want it named. We can fix that by moving it to the public transport category, just like that. And then we want to get rid of the central lanes here because that looks odd. Now for accomplishing this, we're gonna grab from the very same offer, in fact, the vanilla asphalt extra large over markings. And this is basically a net lane that we can utilize on top of roads to just cover up those central lines. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do this with the entire track, which I'm not gonna showcase you guys, and then we'll get to the detailing. Okay, so this is starting to look like a proper racetrack, and I'm so excited to dive into the detailing because then it's all really gonna come together. I want to highlight this amazing decal and net lane pack by Elgento87. We've got red and white striped curbs in different size configurations. We've even got sponsor bands. We've got black and white curbs if we want to utilize those. Different colored bands for more fancy tracks, and a finish line as well. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to detail up this chicane utilizing all the surfaces and net lanes and decals that are going to be prominent throughout the entire track. And then we're going to jump into a time lapse and detail the whole thing up. Let's start by placing down some curbs. I'm going to grab the 1 by 2.5 version because that's pretty much the size I'm aiming for. And the wonderful thing about these being net lanes is that we can just place these pretty freely with the continuous tool mode without any snapping, and then use the manipulation mode within Move It to just kind of make sure that they align perfectly. So I'm just going to quickly add a few segments. Just like this, and it's of course looking like a wonky mess now, but with the manipulation mode you'll see we've got just the subnodes we want to be able to tweak, so we can bring this in real tight and align it with the actual racing line, just like that. Oh, it's already looking great. I'm so hyped. I think next up we're gonna grab a surface. I've got a couple colorized surfaces, and I kind of want to add like a green textured field behind some of these curbs, like some sort of area, some sort of grippy material that just offers a little more grip, as we expect cars to really push the track limits and get both tires not just onto the curb, but perhaps also a bit beyond it. So I'm just looking for something that has like a dark green tint of some sort. So maybe this traffic set bike lane, this is by the same creator again. So I'm once again being absolutely carried by modders, but you guys are used to it by this point. So let's just add that a little bit of extra grippy material here so that you can really push the track limits if you want. But of course, if you go beyond them, you'll get some sort of penalty, forced to drive through the pits or something like that. That is very nice. We're gonna stain this up like mad, so it's gonna look really used, don't worry. This is a fairly old track, I imagine, that has seen a ton of use. Lots of patchy asphalt and stuff, just like at Sebring in Florida. So we're gonna add all those details in here. And I think we're gonna run American muscle cars on this track, so it's gonna be very fitting. Let's have a look. I think that looks fairly nice. Next up, we'll be adding some decals, and this is gonna be a super important addition. We're gonna move into road asset decals, and then we're gonna grab some of Sully's tire marks. And this is going to add a ton of character. So I'm going to grab most of these light ones and then just add a ton of them. We could add a few that aren't light as well, but as you can see, actually, let's just get this added in. They're pretty well defined. So people have really been like locking up the brakes or something when we utilize these. But I'm going to prefer the lighter ones. They're not as visible, and then just by adding a ton of them, it should look pretty amazing. We can use these straight versions to really showcase these hard braking zones. And as will often be the case with racing, people are gonna attempt to take the inside line to make a pass, doing a bendy part of the track. So we'll have some inside braking visualized as well. And then in terms of stain decals, I am for once not going to use my favorite S-Large 2K solid decal, this bad boy, which I think I've placed about 2,000 or 2,500 times in Easthaven. I just pulled that number out of somewhere, but I utilize this everywhere. I'm gonna go for a slightly lighter type of stain because I think this one is maybe a bit overkill. So the small version here, I'm going to be adding to some of the places on the track where there's the most friction between the tires and the actual tarmac. So that would be these areas as well, heavy braking zones and stuff like that. We're also going to be adding some different road crack details throughout, just to make like the overall condition of the track a little more shabby, I guess. And then in terms of some of the areas where you expect to make a quick exit moving out of a curve because you want, a really good entry to a long straight or somewhere where you can go flat out, we're going to add some sort of, ground texture just to kind of highlight that as people go slightly wide here, they of course kind of cut up the grass and make it more dirt-like. I need to find the right decal for that, but I'll find it. I think things are really, really starting to come together and look super nice. So now it's just a matter of detailing up the entire track. Let's go. A bit of careful detailing and it's all coming together now and starting to look like a proper racetrack. We need more stuff in the interior, so to speak, you know, for the marshals, for audiences, and a couple of bridges to actually get the pit area connected to the remaining road layout. But before we continue, let's take a quick look at our ongoing subscriber city hopping. So sit tight, these numbers are a bit crazy, but last time we checked in, we were about 160,000 strong in this community. Enough to fully constitute the two very different cities of Killeen, Texas, which we've learned is dominated by the biggest army base in the US, or Patterson, New Jersey, which we've learned was a great location used for throwing people off bridges in The Sopranos, a favorite show of mine.
What line of work are you in?
Waste management consultant.
Well, in just 1 week, we've passed 162,000 subscribers, which is crazy, so welcome on board and thank you all. Of course, that also means we need a new home. And this next matchup is full-on Californication, as it's between Corona and Palmdale, so it'll be interesting to see how these two cities differ. We're gonna kick off with Corona, which has some surprisingly regular city limits for a US city, and looks to be in the Los Angeles metropolitan area, although I don't hope people actually commute to downtown LA, because that's gonna be quite a drive, or people probably do, in search of the American dream. Anyways, moving a bit further inwards to the city, it's one of these suburban areas where it's pretty hard to designate a downtown area, although it does look like there's a lot of commercial activity within this weird circular road, so West and East Grand Boulevard. Apparently the grid layout got a little too boring, so they created this weird layout, as well as just having this odd little bend on South Main Street. Very creative. Now it seems obvious that Corona is dominated by single-family detached housing, but I wouldn't say the density is terrible. I don't know the exact figures, but the lot sizes are pretty small. And I'm always surprised by just how dense certain areas of Los Angeles can get, even if you look beyond the areas with medium density apartment blocks, simply due to the nature of being able to cram so many detached houses within each city block. Now I can't immediately find something crazily unique about Corona, so if you've got some info, you've got some knowledge on Corona, something interesting, let us know in the comments. Moving on to Palmdale, we've got some more ordinary city limits, and by ordinary I mean weirder in US context, with weird enclaves everywhere. And on the surface, the name gives me slightly better connotations than Corona, and as we zoom out, I guess we're beyond the Los Angeles metropolitan area. At least there are some mountains in the way. So it looks like we're kind of on the outskirts of suburban sprawl connected to the LA metro area, because we've got farming and what looks to be unused land as well. Okay, so there's definitely more interesting stuff to look at here in Palmdale, but I guess that's just the nature of being on the very perimeter of suburban sprawl, where it seems that in some cases, there's been enough demand for big investors to buy up large lots and build these big developments. And in other cases, we see former farming fields just kind of being patchwork developed with small individual lots. And as we move into what I guess is downtown, the city center, we even have a bit of relatively modern apartment buildings being built here. So it's got a more interesting vibe than Corona, not necessarily better, but there's just more stuff to look at. And just as I was about to say, I couldn't find anything super interesting. It seems that if we just have a look at the Palmdale Regional Airport, we do have some Air Force stuff going on here. We've got some Lockheed Martin, and up here we've got some Northrop Grumman. So maybe there's like some Air Force development going on here, kind of like in Easthaven, but then not quite. An interesting airport for sure, but if there's something else that's a little more interesting or unique that we should all know about Palmdale, let us know in the comments. So I'd be very interested in hearing which of these two cities you prefer and why. Personally, I'm hoping for a slightly more interesting choice next time around, but I do live in a cloudy, damp country where the oldest cities are about 1300 years old, so maybe the transition is just too daunting for me. Anyways, if you do enjoy my content and you want to bring even more interesting cities on the table next, consider subscribing. Thank you. Alright, so straight back into the game, where I've just flattened this big patch of land right behind the pits, because we're gonna build the pit backstage area, I guess you could say. And when there's no race going on, it's just gonna look like a big empty parking lot, a big piece of asphalt. But when there is racing going on, there's gonna be trucks and other equipment as teams and drivers bring in all the stuff they need. So to lay out this road grid, we're gonna go for something with no curbs or sidewalks so that we can make it have this uniform surface look. And I'm gonna utilize the very wide alley, which, as the name might imply, is just a very wide version of the vanilla alley I've created in Road Builder. And I'm gonna use the wide version for the same purpose I use it in industrial areas, and that is to accommodate a truck or 18-wheeler traffic, basically. We'll also need to bridge across the track, and I want to go really close to the pit structure. I'm going to raise by 7.5 meters, I think. That should be more than sufficient. Disable all snapping and then bring it really close to the actual structure. And then we're just going to move across. And as soon as I can, I will click and start lowering it so that the decline or incline rather, both actually aren't too bad for the truck traffic we'll be seeing here. And I guess 8.5 is probably a little extreme, but oh well, they'll have to manage. Then I think we're just gonna upgrade one of these segments to a regular road piece, because that's gonna integrate better with the existing road. Actually, scratch that, we should upgrade it to this piece. That's gonna look a little better. And then of course we'll need to get this connection complete as well, which is also going to be about 8%, so that's just the way it is, I guess. We'll grab the vanilla pavement surface 01 and just map out the big boring surface that is going to constitute most of this backstage area. And just like with airplanes, the wildlife here in Easthaven County do whatever they please. It's outside of my control, obviously. Actually, I wonder if I can... Oh! Oh man. Oh, I'm sorry. Anyways, we are of course going to have an active race session at our racetrack, so let's kind of segment the space up a bit more and get some trucks and other props in place. So I think we're just gonna grab the regular narrow alley and just kind of subdivide this a little bit. I want to add some decals or net lanes to kind of detail up these subdivisions, but we're gonna be placing down a couple of trucks beforehand just so we can get the scale right. So with Find It, we're gonna move into industrial vehicles and grab some of these box trailer props. Now I don't want them aligned all the way out here with their back ends, yeah, I guess you would say that, because ideally they should be able to open so they can get out their car. So they'll probably be parked like this, actually. Would they actually... that's a good question. Let's just try and park a few. And we'll just kind of go by how this looks then. So we'll need a bit of distance between each one, which I didn't really respect on that first couple of guys here. So let's add a couple of decals and see if we can get this to make sense, or net lanes rather. Net lanes, let's see, road markings, North American car center line, single lane. Yes, that is exactly what I want. I'm just gonna see if I can enable snapping and find... No, I can't snap to anything, so I'm just gonna find the corner where I can see this transition from road to surface, which is fortunately pretty easy to tell. And then I could enable snapping now to ensure that I get these in a 90-degree angle, so I probably should. And we'll just complete this and see how that looks. Pretty good. I think we're just gonna add in yet another alley to create an additional division right over here, and we're just gonna utilize this very same net lane. And this time around we're actually able to snap because there's like a plane here due to the existing net lane, so that's really nice. Hopefully it's perfectly straight. so that we can get... Oh, what are you snapping to? I got it. And I imagine some of the teams might have dedicated coaches that they travel around in, especially in domestic events, but I guess this depends on like the overall scale of the type of racing we'll see here. I was imagining like a smaller local New England type series with some V8 muscle cars, but maybe some of them are pretty professional and actually have coaches to kind of move alongside with them and to live in or to just have as recreational space. Yeah, coaches as recreational space. Now I'll see if I can remember calling this area the paddock instead of the pit backstage. But anyways, we need a bit of regular parking at the paddock as well. So let's see if there's anything that kind of fits the bill perfectly. I guess the modest parking lot actually just does that, so I think we'll just be adding that in here, although these planters are probably not necessary. Then I think we're gonna treat this empty space as like a parking lot for the actual semi-trucks, because as soon as they unload the boxes here and you can get your car and your equipment out, you strictly probably don't need the semi-trucks to hang around. So we're just gonna grab this semi-truck prop 2 because it's the North American version, and we'll just park a bunch of them over here, as well as maybe a few different types of vehicles as well. Really is quite amazing what a few really high quality decals will do for an area, and it makes it so much easier to not over detail this thing because we've got much more important things to handle, such as accommodating spectators. Now, since this is a far cry from being some international F1 circuit, we are just gonna have a few small stands right here alongside the starting grid. But other than that, you pretty much grab your car, you drive across the bridge here, and then if you've bought tickets, of course, you can kind of camp somewhere alongside the interior of the track, bring a tent or maybe an RV, and then just watch some cool racing. So I think we need to start with the actual road layout that's gonna move through the interior of the racetrack, and then we're gonna place the quote-unquote grandstand out here, although it's gonna be pretty small. safe to say we're just trying things out here. But I think I like this look. It certainly does look quite interesting. Now, as we move up to this western half of the track, I think we're sufficiently far away from the pit entry and exits to warrant a few small connections to the actual track so that the marshals can like salvage stock vehicles and stuff like that if need be. So we're going to utilize the very same pit lane to just make a few connections to the track that aren't regularly in use, hopefully. So we'll just be adding a small off branch right at the chicane we've got right here. You shouldn't be able to make the mistake of utilizing this as a driver, because you've miscalculated the chicane gravely then. So it should be pretty obvious that this is only for the marshals or salvaging crew. So that's that connection, and then I think we need a more direct one up here. And we could go for something like just a straight connection like that, and then perhaps a bit further up the hill as well. We'll do something like this. And if you're wondering what this stuff is out here in the first detailing session, this is a toilet for the racing crew, or for the track's crew rather. I am so considerate. Let's get some stands in place for the crowds. So we'll need a main stand here by the starting grid, and I think we can just search for sport stand. Should bring us a nice selection of props. And I don't want to go too big. And if I can do like maybe I was just about to say async, but it's probably asymmetrical setup here, I think I will. So if we have like one of these large ones, then hopefully we can just kind of, oh, that's very small, isn't it? Maybe, okay, so maybe 2 large stands. And then we'll add a couple of these smaller ones. Looks a little weird, so I'm gonna try to set up a second set of the smaller ones right behind so that they're slightly elevated. Building our own stand basically, and I guess it could actually just work like this, but I'm hopeful that if I select these two and move it and just bring them a little further back, just like this, then I actually think that looks fairly alright. Alright, so that is our main stand, and I think that's appropriate given the size. Like I said, it's not a super fancy track, but honestly this pit structure here is actually pretty fancy compared to at least the tracks we're taking some inspiration from. I mean, I think in Virginia it just looks like an old post office or something like that. But I think we need one more stand, and I think I have just the location. Because imagine having 2 stands right up here looking eastwards. You'll be able to see 80% of the track, including some of the more tricky sections. And I especially think this section here is gonna be... Come on. Okay. I especially think this section is going to be tricky because, you know, there's a lot of elevation changes here. So the car is going to experience a lot of pressure. So let's just see if we can grab these 2 here and maybe kind of make the same configuration. Or maybe slightly different. We'll see. So I'm just going to add 3 of these next to each other. Might even add a bit of a corner segment here now that we have it, and where we are actually near a very sharp corner, and just move that a bit further down, just like this. And then in terms of the color scheme, I kind of like this blue one. We'll try that out throughout all of these stands here. Should make a cool contrast to the red and white curbs. And as we just add a few more of these wonderful, wonderful decals, I'm kind of thinking I might have to add like some sort of park, or maybe a couple of parks or playgrounds out here so that we can actually bring some people in. Of course, it might look a little odd with lots of traffic crossing the bridge when there's an ongoing race, but a bit of activity here, some actual cars being parked at these parking lots would bring the whole thing a little more to life and be a pretty nice addition, I think. We've got some all-new playgrounds from the most recent patch that I haven't used at all yet, so I think we're gonna try some of these out. They have pretty dramatic colors, so I'm interested in seeing just how it's gonna work. I'm gonna disable snapping here so that we can just kind of align it, but I think this would be a good spot I imagine families with children, the children might not always want to see the racing. I can't imagine why, but, would be good to just be able to take them to the playground, let them expend all their energy so that they shut up during the actual race. It's probably more healthy than just giving them an iPad. I am not qualified to give parental advice, by the way, so keep that in mind. But I think these parks actually look pretty cool. And it's obviously a pretty recent investment by this race park to make it more family friendly. And then up here, I think we'll be adding maybe this urban pocket park, as it's called, where you can just, maybe there's like a hot dog stand, you can grab a bite to eat, maybe get some information about upcoming races, stuff like that. And then perhaps a little playground, a small playground of some sort, yes. And we can kind of cover that behind the stand. Actually, this hilly playground looks super cool, so we might just make a little switcheroo here just to get a chance to use that. And I think the spot here is pretty well suited for it. Yes, that is nice. Let's just move some of these trees slightly out of the way. Isn't that cute? So there's a nice view of the racetrack from up here, but there's also a pretty nice view of just about everything else. Well, our first visitor seems to be a police cruiser from Chowder Bay, of all stations. That's a long way from home. Why are you here? Although it kind of does look like a safety car. We're adding a quick and easy parking lot dedicated to the people that buy the cheap tickets for the main stand. Just doing an easy freeform connection to the expressway. Probably actually gonna try to add an additional segment, or if I can just if I can just place this, grab, move it, and then just manually move it like this so that it's aligned. Then we're gonna jump into our road tools and turn this into a key. Just like that. And then we'll of course get that connected as well. And we'll hopefully just be able to move straight through here. And let's see. Yes, perfect. And yet another police cruiser. Guys, I don't think there's a ton of crime out here. There are no people out here. This time it's a slightly older Ford Crown Victoria type vehicle from Mercy Police Department Downtown HQ. Okay, so it's at least within the actual precinct, I guess, but come on. Anyways, we've got a bit of a blank slate here where we need to add some pathways, some decals, some of these barriers to cover the entire track, of course, and just a bit of simple detailing with some trees.
Just like we're ready, kinda like you like that. You never ask me if I'm happy or sad. Just like we're ready, kinda like you like that. You never ask me if I'm happy or sad. Just like we're ready, kinda like you like that. You never ask me
And for the final bit of detailing, we'll be adding something I've really been looking forward to. We'll be adding the muscle car props throughout the track to simulate an ongoing race. I'm gonna use prop 1, 2, 3, and 4. Probably not the 5th one here because that's kind of the odd one out. But it's gonna look like a really classic V8 Trans Am kind of race. It's gonna be so much fun. Now we're gonna try something a little weird here, but I wonder if I can grab a chimney and lower that into the ground. I need one that, you know, actually, of course, produces smoke. Maybe this one is a little too big, so I'm just gonna see if I can, you know, if there's like, if there's levels to like the amount of smoke they generate. It doesn't seem to be the case, but I think I'm gonna grab the shorter one. Then we're gonna move it, and we're gonna move that right over here, right on top of this guy's engine. Because, you know, I don't think this filter's having a great time. So if I just lower that into the ground and we... Oh man, that's not looking great, is it? So there you have it. I think this is the level of detail I'll be settling on. I could probably spend a couple of more hours just detailing this bad boy up, but yeah, I kind of want to strike that balance that I kind of want to adhere to throughout the entirety of Easthaven County, and this has just been so much fun. One of the most fun builds I've done in a while, that's for sure. Now I'm gonna need some feedback. What are we naming this raceway? And if you're like, if you really want to nerd out and name the series that are running here as well, like the active race we've got ongoing right now, and the specs or the whatever details you want to add, go ahead. I love when you guys nerd out. I really do appreciate that, so just feel free. I'm gonna shoot some final cinematics of the new raceway, and of course I hope to see you all in the next one. Goodbye.